Welcome to Freedom Talks, part of the Freedom Circles from our political movement, República Libre. My name is Eric Fortunato, and I'm a founding member of República Libre. We are a liberal slash libertarian political organization, and we want to see a freer Dominican Republic, politically, economically, and socially. These talks started in 2020 to search for answers to the challenges that the COVID 19 brought to the ideas of freedom and individual liberties. Since 2021, we have broadened these talks to build relationships with other leaders and defenders of freedom for the sake of advancing these ideas in our country and the region. Today, we are honored to have with us Jonathan Casey, co-founder and chair of the Classical Liberal Caucus of the Libertarian Party of the United States. Welcome, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited for this talk. I love seeing liberty movements around the world developing. And I was telling you before we got started that I love to see how, our philosophy, our principles can be applied in anywhere around the world at any time. I think it's one of the most beautiful things about our philosophy is it doesn't require a set of circumstances to be what we want to fight for.
Awesome, awesome. We are the ones that are honored to have a guest like you. So let's get right to it. And the first thing I want us to talk about is that in Latin America, we have a political tradition that is quite presidential. And that is why, usually, as libertarians, we are reproached because in the US, the Libertarian Party has not achieved the presidency yet. To this, what do you suggest we should answer?
So I'd start off by asking, well, where have the politicians that have been elected president gotten the United States? We've got rising inflation, rising costs of living. We've got so many issues that are rising up continually that aren't being solved. We've got criminal justice issues, inflation issues. So by not electing libertarian presidents, where has that gotten us? So I think you'd also want to point them to the fact that their own politicians where has your politician gotten you? Where is your
Mm.
politician taking this country? And I think that if you look at it, we have the solutions. We have to be able to express that to people that liberty is the path forward. And even if we don't have the political success, when the ideas of liberty are implemented, even in small ways, they still move the needle in the right direction and getting people, letting people live their lives, letting people pursue their own interests will inevitably lead to greater prosperity across the board. So even if we haven't achieved the political success, where our ideas have been implemented, they do achieve success.
Totally with you on that. I mean, yeah. Uh, Wherever there is progress, there are the ideas of freedom and liberty in those that have been in political power. But yeah.
Yeah, I think our ideas are inherently against political power, and so all the money, all the influence, everyone who wants to influence politics does it because they gain something from it. And our
Yeah.
ideas of classical liberalism, of libertarianism, is that power shouldn't be used that way. So we have a lot of powerful interests that want to work against us because they want to use that power for their own benefit, and we want to say no. No one should be using it for their own benefit. If we're going to have a government, it should be to protect individual liberty, and that's about it. And that doesn't sit well with people who actually pour a lot of money into politics. So that's a hurdle where every libertarian movement around the world is going to have to jump across.
Thank you. In our region, sometimes the public debate tries to label libertarians to the right or the left, according to the interests of the moment. In the case of the classical liberal caucus, what could we say distinguishes your caucus from the Democrat and Republican parties?
So whenever somebody says left or right, my first assumption there is that they're both trying to enforce some kind of personal choice on others. On the left, they do it in certain ways. On the right, they do it in others. And I think that for a libertarian, we say no personal choices should be enforced on anyone else. So I think that is the differentiating factor between a libertarian and a Republican or a Democrat is that no personal choices should be made except by you. You should be in charge of all of your personal choices. as long as you don't harm anybody else, they're your choices to make. And I think that is what differentiates us and sets us apart from the left or the right, at least in my view.
So it's like asking them, so what are you trying to impose me? And I'm going to tell you if you are left or right.
Right. Exactly. It's whether it's I mean, you could bring up any number of issues. Ultimately someone is trying to make a personal choice for somebody else, and that's what puts them on the left or the right.
What would you say to someone that labels your party as Republicans that are seeking less taxes, but in everything else are the same?
I wouldn't say we're the same at all in everything else. I think that Republicans have supported a lot of foreign wars that we've been opposed to. I think that they've imposed a lot of those personal choices that we just talked about. I think there's a lot of differences between us and Republicans, though Republicans certainly pay lip service to a lot of economic freedoms that we agree with. Once they actually get in power, it falls apart. Just like recently, they just proposed a bill to eliminate the income tax. If they were actually truly in power, they would not have ever proposed that bill, because they don't actually want to move us in that direction. They just want to bring everybody along with the tidbits of liberty, to kind of bait people into voting for them, to continue to control and to hold people. Pull people in with their rhetoric, but when they actually get in office, it doesn't hold up. They don't. If they preached, I forget what the quote exactly is, but if Republicans run as libertarians, but govern as Democrats, I forget who said it, but that's typically true.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I forget who said the quote, but it's not my quote, but it's a good quote.
So let's talk about, strong leadership in that. In a region, some say that strong and centralized leadership should be backed. That when you compete, you take votes from the Republican Party, making it easier for Democrats to govern. For us, it will be of great value to know what you think in this regard, because in our countries, conservatives insist to the general population that they should vote for the same right-wing parties as always, that voting for libertarians is wasting the vote by letting the left-wing parties win.
We get this a lot in the States as well. People want to say you have to vote for the lesser of two evils. Well, if you keep voting for the lesser of two evils, you're still going to get more evil. At some point, we've got to put our foot down and say no. We're going to vote for people we actually want in office, not just because we don't want the other guy not in office. If you keep voting against people, you're never going to get somebody you want. Like that, at the end of the day, as long as if you don't vote for who you want, you'll never get who you want. So that's how I look at it. And people say you're throwing away your vote. The only way you're actually throwing away your vote is if you vote for somebody you don't agree with. That's at least in my view. That's how I look at it.
Currently, what will you recommend to libertarians in Latin America that they focus on? Town hall and Congress, or that they push projects with the aspiration of reaching the presidency as quickly as possible?
I mean, I think you have to do it across the board. I think that you can't let the presidency, you can't not run somebody for presidency, because that's a huge opportunity to get your voice out there. At least in the United States, it's an opportunity to reach people that never have heard of the Libertarian Party or Liberty Movement before. So ignoring it completely is not an option. Obviously we all work with limited resources. So there is some strategy behind, where you want to actually put those resources towards. But ultimately, you want to put the best people forward at the top of the ticket, because if you can motivate voters to get out at the top of the ticket, they're going to vote for you down, the down ballot candidates as well. So running people at the top of the ticket, good people at the top of the ticket, helps the people down the ticket. So I think you can't just say you only do the lower level of government or just the higher level. I think you have to figure out a way of doing as much as you can.
Thank you. Usually, there are many debates among libertarians on different topics, which is good because it indicates that we are thinking individuals and not a herd. But sometimes in politics, it is necessary to maintain certain general guidelines to unify the political movement. In the case of the caucus, what general guidelines are the ones that you are currently pushing together in the public agenda of the United States?
So I think there does need to be, a common theme, a common belief that all libertarians have, so that we can all agree, okay, this is what we want to generally move forward towards. I think what differentiates our caucus is that we want to focus on things that on actually making progress towards specific goals. So we have a policy guide on our website that says, here's a policy that a town, a city can implement to increase liberty in lives. And it can be a small policy. It doesn't have to be a massive policy, but it's still a step forward in the right direction. I'm very much I like to call myself a directionalist. I want to get us going in the right direction. I don't like where we end up at the end is irrelevant if we don't have a path towards it. So I think it's far more important to start getting a path towards where we want to go than worrying about where we end up with at the very end, because we're nowhere near where we want to get to. So let's at least try to get us going in the right direction, and then we can talk about where we want to stop, how we want to figure things out at the very end of it. But we have at least got to get going in the right direction. So I think that's the biggest differentiator between us and the Libertarian Party and some of the others. Is some of the others want the end result right now, and I don't see how you can get there without the path.
Yep. There's a saying here that if you don't know where you want to go, you already got there.
Right. I like that. That's good.
What distinguishes your caucus in terms of ideas or ideology, whatever you want to call it, the elements that are distinguishable from the other caucuses within your party?
So we are we're very much of the classical liberal bent. So we have anarchists in our party, and I love them to death. But as general rule, we are less of an anarchist, less late Rothbard, more early Rothbard, Hayek, Friedman, Mises, all those classical liberals. That is what we strive for. We believe that there is a role for government in society. We don't see really a path away from that. There is a role for government to protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So that's kind of our general beliefs.
Awesome. Now imagine that the caucus is on the leadership, and it has the leadership of the party, and you got political power. What will be the four main policies that you will seek to implement?
I don't know that I can limit it to just three or just four. It's hard because I would say that first, I really would love to see a movement towards true criminal justice reform. We saw it become a huge issue in the 2020. But we really need to learn. We really need to be able to hold police officers accountable for their actions. And involved with that, we need to end the drug war. We need to reform immigration. We need to reform how our schools are funded. Let's get federal government out of schools. We need to work on the Fed, making the Fed more accountable, if not ending the Fed, hopefully ending the Fed entirely and getting government out of our currency, because that is a major issue with our economy, is having government in control of what our money is worth. And I think that's a really dangerous place to be in. So those would be, I guess I've named three issues. I'd say another one would be foreign policy would be a huge one. We need to stop supporting the Saudis in Yemen. We need to get the American troops back home and focus on the defense of the U.S. That's their primary purpose, and that's the primary goal. We've got to stop policing around the world. Thankfully, we've ended Afghanistan and Iraq, but we've got to prevent those future Afghanistans and Iraqs from happening. I think that's a huge issue that we've got to focus on.
And now that you mentioned that point of foreign policy, I want to hold you on that. But instead of thinking about those places over there, I want to know the foreign policy of the USA if the caucus were in power for Latin America.
Well, I think open borders is a huge win-win for everyone, because I think that opening, and by open borders, let me be very clear, open borders is letting anyone into the country that isn't a threat to someone else. As long as we have no evidence that somebody is a threat, they should be let in. That doesn't mean giving them citizenship. There should be some path to citizenship, I think, but that doesn't mean automatic citizenship. But certainly for work, for vacation, whatever, let them come over, let them work, vacation, whatever they want to do. As long as you aren't harming somebody else, let them come. And then a free trade policy as well. We try to let our government twist and charge and tariffs and everything here and there. We just need an open trade policy with the entirety of the Americas. I think that would be a huge. There's a huge economic resources in Latin America that we could be able to mutually benefit from, if we had more free trade between our nations. And then ending the drug war. I think if you've paid any attention to some of the stories coming out of Mexico, if we just take away the cash cow from the cartels by ending the drug war, that would be a huge benefit to a lot of Latin American countries.
I bet that there are a lot of, and I'm hoping that a lot of fellows from the region will like and love what you just said, because I think I think it will be a good policy to work together, and with that also help our countries to get developed.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. You were talking about like different authors and that, and in that sense, usually in the world of libertarianism, everyone has like their favorite authors. Some go for Hayek, others for Milton Friedman, others for Adam Smith, Bastiat, Ayn Rand, Rothbard, Hans Hermann Hope, von Mises, among others. Which of this do you understand that is the most popular among members of the caucus?
I don't know that I could pick just one, but you've got I'm going to have to speak for myself here. But Milton Friedman was one of the people that brought me into the liberty movement. His videos online on YouTube made a huge impact in my life. So I think that one for me is huge. But I think Bastiat and Mises are right there behind him for a lot of our members. And I can't go without saying Hayek and Adam Smith and Ayn Rand. Like, can't ignore those guys. But still, if I have to put them on tiers, that's kind of where I would put them.
Okay. What criticisms has the caucus made of the past Trump administration and the current Biden administration that they understand the press should point out more?
So we're a brand new caucus, so we weren't around during Trump's presidency, but we definitely have a lot of criticisms of his presidency. For one, the massive amounts of spending. He did not, massive amounts of spending. He didn't get us out of the war. It took, Biden to get us out of the war, and then it was done horribly. But at least we're out. We're in Afghanistan and Iraq. And then with Biden, boy, it's going back to the Obama, where everything that he does is whitewashed. Everything that he does is put in the best light. I mean, imagine what they were saying about Trump with the documents, the top secret documents that were found at Trump Mar-a-Lago, and then now they found some at Biden's, and so they're going to be, it's just a prime example of how they treat two different politicians completely differently. My opinion is, everyone talks about how mean the press was to Trump. That is how they should treat every president. They should be going after every president, every elected official, exactly as hard as they went after Trump. Like, that should be the gold standard of how reporting should be done about politicians. They should nitpick at every little thing, go after every little thing that somebody in power does. But I think that having more aggressive across the board with every politician is a good thing. Investigate everything.
And trust no one.
Exactly.
Politics nowadays already exceeds the borders between countries, and some actors from authoritarian regimes such as China, Russia, or Iran try to favor governments that are friendlier to them in Latin America. But this is detrimental to freedom. What is the caucus stand on this? And what can we say in the face of this situation that both Republicans and Democrats have ignored?
Yeah, I think this is a big issue. I think that it is a really it's a tricky issue because you do have you have these massive countries with massive want to use the resources of smaller countries, and so they can use this influence on those countries in negative ways that can really impact people's freedom. I think the best policy for the U.S. is to, again, going back to having a free trade across the board in the Americas would be a massive protection against Chinese and Iranian and Russian influences. If Latin American countries know that they can have that free trade with the United States and they aren't at risk, they would be less likely to need to go to Russia or to China and say, can we make some trade deals with you? So I think that, again, free trade is one of those. It seems simple. It's such a simple thing, but yes, it solves so many of these issues by giving countries the freedom to trade with who they need to. And so it takes some power away from China and Russia if we implemented that.
Awesome. That sounds quite uh it kind of gives hope
Yeah,
that it certainly does, because with everything that is occurring, like, what can Latin America, like, that usually feel like defenseless, like it can do when you have a lot of debt and like a lot of pressure and political
right.
pressure. But that gives hope. That gives hope.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately, one of the, you don't want it to come to this, but I think, again, having an open immigration policy, so if things do get really bad, you have a place to flee to. That I think that we forget, especially as an American, I've never thought, oh, I'll have to leave my homeland because somebody was going to harm me, or somebody was, I'm being persecuted, or so it's one of those things that we forget how valuable that is to have an escape route to a better place. So in that, that's if the worst happens and China does impose some horrific rules, or has gains too much influence, we can at least give people an escape route.
And Jonathan, we appreciate your kindness with your libertarian brothers in Latin America. In the specific case of us, as a libertarian political movement in the Dominican Republic, what advice would you give us to grow and push the message of freedom with greater force?
So I think an underrated value of libertarians, at least in today's world, is that it's a very empathetic message. It reaches people where they're at and says, "Here's how getting government out of your way, you can choose, you can pick up and make your life better." I think that it's an empowering message. It's an empathetic message. It reaches people where they're at and says, "Listen, government, your politicians, they don't know what's best for you. You do." And I think that showing people how liberty can improve their lives, and how that can end poverty, how it can create peace and prosperity and human cooperation. I think that's a really valuable aspect, and something that I think can be told across any border, any place in the world, and can reach people where they're at. And you know Again, letting people make their own decisions for themselves is a powerful message that needs to be out there more, and we need to make sure we're doing a good job of expressing that.
Awesome. That's really, it sounds convincing, and that's what we got to do, like, to um to get our food on the ground, the feet on the ground, and where the people is at, and let them know
Right.
how awesome, how good it is to freedom, and to solve our problems and make our own decisions.
Yeah, I think we too often kind of fall into the trap that we need to shock people with our ideas to get them to listen. Sometimes the simplest message reaches people, and I think that that's something we have to keep in mind as we're talking to people. They're not Most people aren't worried about, global economic crisis. They're not worried about these big issues. They are worried about, putting food on their table. They're worried about paying rent. They're worried about getting a job. They're worried about their bad job. They're worried about these things in their own lives. And so we have to show them how more liberty can improve their own lives, and how getting government out of a lot of these things can really help uh, drive development, drive improvement, and get government out of their way can really improve things.
Yeah, being empathetic is key, definitely.
Yeah, if you're just preaching, if you're not empathetic, you're just preaching at people. You're just preaching them and telling them this is how you need to do things. Being empathetic means listening to them, understanding where they're at, and then applying these principles to their life and showing them how they can be improved. So.
Well, thanks a lot again for being with us. It has been an awesome time, and
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, it's great. Like I said at the beginning, I love seeing the liberty movements being spread around the world. I think that Latin America is a massive opportunity for liberty movement to come in after, it's been so bad. Politics down there have been so bad for so long that I think that people are going to be looking for a different way, and that we need to be effective at reaching them. And so I love what you guys are doing. And you guys keep up the good work.
Thank you, and we're hoping that you guys will also keep the good job in like spreading those ideas. And let's see what the future has for us. What the future has for us.
Absolutely.
Working together.
Sounds good.
Well.